Good evening and welcome to the September 20th meeting of the Lower Merion Township Environmental Advisory Council's regular monthly meeting. We unfortunately this month do not have a quorum for a number of reasons. And so that this meeting we will carry out this meeting. We will welcome the, at the appropriate times to hear from the public. We will discuss topics, but we will, if we were to take any official action, we would need to postpone anything that was an official action to next month. Although I believe we can get a general sense of the opinions of folks in this meeting. We'd slated as our first item on the agenda an opportunity for members of the EAC to recognize Mackie San Miguel Paulson, an EAC member who unexpectedly passed away on the 7th of September. Because we have so few EAC members present tonight, I think it's been suggested, and I concur, that we should postpone those comments and tributes to to our next meeting. But I do think it's appropriate for us to have a moment of silence as we remember Mackie and her energy and zest for life and for all the work we were doing. So let's just take 1 minute here, please. Thank you, everyone. I believe before we began the recording, it was noted the members of the EAC who were present. So I think we should just repeat that for the benefit of those watching this recording. In the room present this evening, we have David Richmond and Dan Sutton and myself, Nancy Winkler. And on the Zoom, we have I believe two EAC members, and I'm struggling here to see them, but Jen Pavao, and I believe also Adam Cutler.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, Adam, for some reason I'm unable to see you on my screen. I don't know why. Great, thank you.
Oh, Dan. Wait, who was the other one?
Adam Cutler,
Oh, Adam and, okay.
Jen Pavao.
Okay, it looks like we have a good number of members of the public as well as the applicant for the landfill project.
There are no members of the public at this time physically present in the room. For those of you who are on Zoom. So we're going to have to postpone the second item on the agenda, approval of the minutes, and then move to the third item, the subdivision and land development review of 23 and 27 Landfair Road, which is a multifamily project near the center of near Suburban Square on Landfair Road.
They offered to give a couple give a little overview of it, Nancy, if you'd like.
Okay, great. The applicant's going to give us a overview of their proposal.
All right. Hello, good evening. This is Rob Lambert from Site Engineering Concepts. I have Bern Panzak, landscape architect, on the team, and Kathy Dopkin, the architect, here with us tonight. There we go. You're screen sharing. You beat me to it. So I'm going to share my screen here. So this is the plan set that was submitted. It's the full plan set, so I'll flip through the pages quickly, the ones that were kind of not relevant to tonight's presentation. But the location of the site is here in the cross hatching. You can see Landfair is almost like a boomerang going Montgomery Avenues to the top of the page. Lancaster, or the railroad, would be off to the bottom left corner. So I'm going to go to the existing conditions. Oops. Sorry about that. So the existing property, there's two adjacent properties. They're multifamily, small multifamily dwellings. And so we have two of those that are adjacent that are going to be removed. And really all the improvements on each property will be removed as part of this development. As with most properties, this property does not have any stormwater management or anything controls currently. I'm just going to skip forward to the proposed plan. So we propose to build two small multifamily dwellings on the property. There's a structure in the rear and a structure out to Landfair. I will kind of generally go over it more focused on EAC comments than general presentation comments that like Planning Commission and board would hear. There is a underground parking level, and so all of the parking for this will actually be under the building. So we'll be excavating down. The driveway is on the north side of the building. It goes down to a subsurface level, and you can see in the lower left-hand corner, this is the layout of the parking underground. And then so you'll have the two buildings above that parking level. You can see in the back, there's a proposed underground stormwater feature. So we are proposing to have both infiltration and rate control on site. The roof leaders from the building will all go to the infiltration area, which will then overflow into the township sewer. As we further the design on that, we're potentially working with neighbors on an access easement that would go through their property, but right now we're showing going down Landfair to connect to the existing public sewer. Jump forward to the architecturals. So that's the lower level parking. You can see the ramp coming in to get down below grade. These are architecturals. Kathy can get into more detail if you have questions. But again, you have the two different buildings. So you have building 1 and building 2. Building 1, Landfair Road would be off to the right. And then looking at the front of the building would be the lower right image. And so you can see that there would be a entrance to the lobby area. The building is then open to kind of an inner courtyard between the buildings. And then off to the left is the driveway down below. These are just different sections of the building. This is the proposed landscape plan showing, or this is the removals, I'm sorry. And then the next one is the proposed landscape plan showing all the proposed plants. Again, because of the way the building's situated, is really a lot of the plants are all around the perimeter of the site. Bern can talk about any of the landscaping if you have any questions about particular plant materials. But,
We do. We will have.
We will have,
Why don't
right.
you finish your, I mean, we'll have comments and questions on.
That's what I figured. I just wanted to run through just to give you the 30,000 foot view, so then you can ask your questions. I'm not trying to answer every question that I would anticipate that you'd have, but just try to give you the general flavor of the project. And then the lighting plans down at the end, at the very end. So we're happy to answer any questions you have, listen to any suggestions. And I like to, I guess, open up to any questions at this point.
How many parking spaces are there relative to the number of units?
We actually, Kathy, do you remember that number? I don't have that number right off the tip of my tongue here.
We have 23 parking spaces. There's 10 units. So we have a few more parking spaces than we require for visitor maintenance, repair kinds of things. We're required to have 18.
And to what extent has your design considered the energy efficiency of these buildings? For example, I don't recall from the diagram that you showed us whether you have a flat roof or not on these buildings, and
So the buildings are all brick, or 90% brick. There's some wood feature in the recessed balcony area. It does have a flat roof. The R value on the wall is well above code at about an R36. And we're doing what we can environmentally and hoping to achieve a pretty high standard, actually.
What are you doing that you think is environmental?
Most of that is with the mechanical systems. Using higher efficiency systems. We would like to do solar ready. If that evolves, there's new incentive programs and new funding available. And so we're looking into all of that.
So you're saying if it's economic for you, you would consider availing yourself of the funds available in the IRA for what? Solar, for heat pumps, for what?
More to offset kind of, the upgraded equipment. And, potentially getting
So, no, you wouldn't change the systems. It's going to be, shall I assume it's gas servicing the building?
the systems will be electric. There will be gas servicing the building, primarily because people want it in their stoves. And I know I'm a lead AP, but that's our market. But that doesn't mean it's running everything.
So what is the gas used for? Only for heating? I mean, only for cooking? Is that the only thing it's going to be used for?
Cooking, it could be some fireplaces. Otherwise, everything would be electric.
Will you be setting up the the range areas to support either 220 or gas? So that if you have residents who want an induction oven or something, they can do it?
I can't really answer that question right now. They're still in the process of designing the systems, but it's a good idea.
I mean, really.
I love an induction top,
That's well, you could recommend that they look into that, although it wouldn't be a formal.
Yes.
Yeah, we would be, yes.
Going back to the parking garage for a moment, have you contemplated the installation of charging stations for electric vehicles?
There will be EV charging stations, yes.
And the number of stations, has that yet been determined?
Not yet.
Can I just ask who will be managing the building after it's constructed?
There'll be a HOA that'll be managing the building.
Did you say that the roof will be solar ready, or you didn't know, but maybe you'd think about it? Unclear. That would be left up to the HOA later?
We're planning to create what is called a solar ready building, in that it's set up with conduit to the roof, comes down to the electrical system where it's set up to be able to install solar panels.
Is there a reason why it's not being built with solar off the bat logistically, or?
It's a pretty flexible market. It needs to settle down a little. You know? It has to, funding is related to what the solar covers. It's a condo. It's a little complicated actually at the moment in terms of how to do that.
Okay,
It's not an institutional building. It's not as cut and dry.
got you.
Yeah.
I'd like you to go back and, is it true that you're removing every single tree on the property?
Not every single tree, many of the trees.
There's a magnificent tree, I guess it's to the, I guess if you were facing the building to the left on the corner, I think that's where it is.
The one to remain.
Yeah, what is its DBH, do you know?
Let me see if I can zoom in here.
Rob, I think it's the, if you go to the existing conditions plan, it's the one that's on site. And it's, looks like a 28-inch, I believe, red maple. And we've looked at that tree and I was looking for some photographs of it, but you know, if you look at it, there are many sort of limb holes and what appears to be cavities in that tree. And we just felt like, you know, from a practical standpoint, that tree was probably not going to be around too much longer by the looks of it. So
You have it evaluated by an arborist?
well, I think the LDC had a comment of that nature, and in speaking with our client, there's a commitment to have an arborist review that tree and many of the other perimeter trees as well.
Yeah, because I'm thinking if you're going to be digging down, if, what are you leaving? What trees are you proposing to leave?
I guess let's go to the landscape plan. So, Rob, if it's possible to zoom in to the plan, there are trees on the, I guess, the north side and the south side with triangles on them. We are hoping to save those trees. We recognize that there will be impacts, and that's what the triangular designation is. There are also trees, one tree in the back right corner there that would be saved. And there are many, well, several trees along the perimeter just off-site that we are saving, and the arborist would also be looking at, you know, trees in close proximity to our property line to just evaluate them and their current condition.
Right, and I mean, obviously, if you dig a giant hole for your garage, you're infringing on all the root systems of these trees to an extreme extent, right? I
Right,
mean,
right.
percent of their root systems.
Yes, we
Removing their
understand.
root systems.
Right, we understand, and we are proposing removal of many of the trees. I would note that 75% of these trees are invasive trees, either Norway maple or
Yeah.
a couple are mulberries. So, you know, we think that with the development, we can improve the quality of the trees that are being replaced. And
What are the three, what are the three trees that are shown with the triangles?
one is if you're moving from Landfair back along the north property line, that one's an oak. Looks like about a 12-inch oak. That's probably the nicest tree on the site. The next one back is a Norway maple. That's a 12-inch Norway maple. Many of the trees are what we categorized as diseased or dying within even the group of invasive trees. So there's really a very low quality appearance to a lot of this edge, probably volunteer Norway maple stand. And if you wrap around the site,
I don't think we're really concerned about Norway maples. I think we're more concerned about large trees that are shade trees in a neighborhood that is residential and is growing, getting more and more developed, and has is just going to become a heat island, just contributing more to the heat island effect every tree you remove.
Understood. Again, trying to save as many of the trees as we can and replace with canopy trees where it seems practical. Certainly along Landfair, there are conditions there with the adjacent maple on the north side. And its canopy, we didn't think an additional shade tree in that position would be appropriate. So there is more of an understory street tree there. And then moving to the middle, those are two more canopy trees. And again, we've got a similar condition on the south side with an adjacent offsite tree creating canopy where we didn't think it would be appropriate to add another large canopy tree kind of under the canopy of that tree just off site. So again, another smaller scale tree at that location.
Could you go back up to the northwest corner of the property tree, the tree there? I thought you told me I thought you said that was the red maple.
The red maple is on site right around where the cursor is right now.
Okay.
Yeah, that tree is very close to, well, the perimeter of the building and also the driveway to the garage area.
There's some questions from the public. I don't know.
Well, in terms of, maybe we'll first go through the questions from the EAC members, and then we'll take questions from the public. Are you familiar with the new subdivision and land development code of the township?
Who are you addressing that?
The developer.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm not the developer, I'm the civil engineer, but yes, I'm aware of it. This, from a technical standpoint, is actually under the previous code, just so there's no confusion.
Yes, no, we appreciate and understand that you were grandfathered under the old code, and the township was it took some time to, we think, make a number of improvements to the standards that we hope will be available for the development in our community, including a significant requirement of native species. Does your planning plan what % of your planning plan has native species? I think the new code is 80%, if possible.
In terms of native, we tried to integrate natives. We also sort of recognize some tried and true performers for the functional plantings that we were trying to accomplish. and have added, those species in there. Well, most of the deciduous material is native or sort of adapted native materials.
You go to that list for us and show us the list.
Yeah, that's just above.
Can you make that bigger?
Yep, I'm working on it.
There are cultivars. We think there's reasons to use these improved varieties. And of course, as you can imagine on this site, there are some tighter conditions where, more space efficient plant materials are important. And, sometimes those things don't lend themselves well to a native species.
There's a comment, you really should be looking for more native species and to think about that. I think one of the messages our group probably will want to send away is to have you go back and take another look at this planting plan and consider adding more natives, particularly along the perimeter. And we're really looking for as much as possible that you could consider. And we do have, along those same lines with regard to the exterior of the building, there's a question from the audience about bird-friendly glazing. Will you be using that?
In terms of the glazing,
For the windows, yeah. Mhm.
we haven't determined the glazing yet.
I had asked earlier about the contour of the roof, and you advised it was flat. And I was wondering if you've considered installing a green roof, what the cost would be, what the energy benefits of doing so might be.
For this project, we'd prefer not to have a green roof in order to leave it available for potential solar.
How did you make that sort of evaluation of solar being superior to the green roof?
We've done other projects where they kind of fight each other. So it would be our recommendation not to do a green roof in this situation. Also, the garage is like a plaza deck. So we actually do have planting on the garage roof between the buildings. So in that respect, those areas are terrace areas with outdoor spaces linking into the community areas, and we're kind of doing what we can there. We plan to use a white roof, so it's reflective. But I've done projects where it's just a tug of war between, if you really want to generate some power, you're on top of your green roof.
Right.
It's just a tug of war we don't want on this project.
So I guess I'm asking you to educate me, but could you explain your reference to a tug of war? What are the conflicting interests?
Well, the solar panels take the place of where the green is.
I see. So the concern is that the green roof would preempt the installation of solar panels at some time in the future?
Yeah, and then the green roof gets broken up and it doesn't thrive as well, and it's a maintenance headache, and it's a condo association. And like I said, this is very different from doing an institutional building where you have some controls over those sorts of things.
So you're saying there are market considerations that
There are, yeah.
disfavor green roofs. That's your experience?
Yeah, a rental building is easier to do than kind of a condo building also.
I hear you. Okay, what is the percentage of impervious surface on this plan?
You're at about 55% or 56%, correct, Rob?
You can go for the table. I like to double check so I don't get my numbers confused.
That is code compliant?
Yes, we are code compliant.
So did you say it's 55%?
I'm just confirming that 55.7%. Existing is 38%.
And we really brought to this project underground parking. We're not looking at parking. We've hidden it all. We're going to the expense of putting the parking underground. We've broken the mass of the building up for light and air. And Rob, if you'll be the pointer, like the whole party of this is to come off of Landfair, look through the front building into a courtyard, open air space, and then enter the second building and actually be able to look all the way through into the rear yard area. So we've really embraced the outdoor environment and connecting to the outdoor environment. And that's how we've started the project from the very beginning. And it's very important to the way that it lays out. So it's something we're fairly proud of, actually.
What's going on in that middle courtyard? Is that impervious surface or is that pervious?
So that's the deck of the garage. So it will have plantings like a green roof. It'll have little courtyard spaces for seating. What you see in brown is a glassy trellis-like link enclosed, but between the two buildings. So you come off of Landfair, and the piece to the south is the building amenity space with the mailboxes, package room, and community space. And they all interlink, and you'll have the ability to kind of go into that covered area between that you walk through for seating. We have a lot planned. It never shows up in this in this sort of stage of things, but each of the apartments has a large balcony that's the focal point.
Yeah, I'm asking, is this the plantings in that area are
It's impervious.
How thick is the roof? So what type of plantings are going in there? Trees or grass or something in between? Yeah.
It's well, Bern can answer what kinds of plants may or may not go in there, but it is calculated in the impervious surface because it is essentially the roof of the garage.
Right, and the plan would be to add herbaceous shrub materials and perhaps a small tree or two in those spaces strategically. And, we are sort of working on the design development of all of that as we move forward. But we've specifically prepared the landscape plan to show the requirements that would be outside of those areas. But there would be a full level of additional design there.
That's right. I had misunderstood earlier. I thought there had been, somebody had said that there was, that was being treated as pervious, but it's not.
No.
No.
Right. Okay, thank you. So we don't need to talk about that.
Do you want to ask the?
When you get into the stormwater management system and show us how that's going to work, what's going in the ground in that trapezoidal area?
So in this area, it's kind of an irregular shape. We're using I believe it's the rain store system. It's a proprietary system to hold the volume of water. So we're collecting the entire roof area, including that little area that you were talking about in the center, directing it back to the stormwater system, which will both do, volume and rate controls, meeting the township requirements, which are, as you know, extensive. And I don't know off the top of my head, but we actually reduce some of the rates of runoff in addition to infiltrating back into the ground.
So how deep do you have to go down to build that system?
It's several feet. We did permeability tests, and the test told us where the optimum location was in our depth to do it. I can show you details if you'd like to see details. Whoops, wrong button. Hang on a second. Scrolling down. So you can see the details of the system.
I can't read that. Sorry.
Okay. They're like a crate type system.
Right. I've seen some installed. I'm just curious how big they are.
It'll cover that entire footprint.
How deep it is.
Oh,
Is
how
it 8 feet deep? Is it 8 feet deep? Is it 20 feet, 12 feet
No,
deep?
it's going to be, I don't have the exact number right here. It's probably 4 feet deep, somewhere around that range as far as the thickness.
You said that you'll only excavate out 4 feet?
It'll be over 4 feet because we'll put a soil layer back on top so we can have grass grow.
So how far down will you dig? How much will you be removing? How deep are you digging is the question, I guess.
Not as deep as the garage. I have the,
Okay, all right, thanks.
I'm sorry, 6 feet.
There's a question online. What size storm is that designed for?
So it'll go up to the 100-year storm, which many of you know is an unfortunate term. It's a 1% chance of happening any 1 year, which is 8.2 inches of rain.
In 20
Over what period of time? 24 hours?
24-hour period is the way they're modeled.
Thank you.
And how much of that rain does it have to be able to handle?
The system has to be able to keep the rates lower than the existing rates. And so it has an overflow and a discharge from it. But the system itself will control that amount of runoff.
So it won't be sheeting off into another property.
Correct.
There's another question online. Is the overflow active or passive?
I am not sure what the question is related to that.
I assume that means is it pumping into, or is it
It's gravity.
gravity? Okay. I think that was the question.
And this system infiltrates the increase in the 25-year storm. So it does have a large infiltration component.
You said it infiltrates the 25-year storm?
Yes. The increase in runoff.
That's great. Are there any more questions on this?
Are you kind of going back to the question that Dan Sutton asked earlier, thinking about the availability of the right electric lines for induction cooking. Will the owners have any kind of detail fit out options where you could explain to them and offer to them, what really will be the state-of-the-art technology within 10 years? I doubt very few people are going to be putting in gas stoves in 10 years.
We do plan to have that discussion, yes.
I mean, I think, to me, educating the public and people who are making large investments in antiquated technology, is sort of a concern of mine that we have people coming and buying into our community, buying new, but winding up buying the, what we know, there's plans to obsolete that technology in this case, the gas stove.
I can't disagree with you.
So, you know, so even if it's just an education process.
Yeah, yeah.
With the public, is helpful. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess what I would say is we can make up a list of comments. I don't think we can vote on them. But I've heard from some members of the EAC that the bigger concern that we have is that we have a vision for a much more sustainable Lower Merion and more sustainable development than this building, you know, is offering. And so for us, when we make comments, it's always within the constraint of what it is you're already allowed to do. You know, we're wrestling with the value of some of what we have to say. I mean, David, do you want to speak to that? I think David's got some comments.
Well, you know, we appreciate that your, you know, principal obligation is to comply with the code requirements. And our interest is in, frankly, exceeding code requirements, and you have market constraints, and we appreciate that. And in terms of, you know, our bringing value to the land development process, and these comments are not directed at this development. I appreciate all the positive features that you have incorporated, the thoughtfulness about even those features that we would commend that you haven't been able to incorporate in the project, but have at least considered. But separate and apart from this project, the question that we are wrestling with, as Nancy alluded to, is how we can best advance the cause of sustainable development in the township, other than through the review of individual plans, given the lack of leverage, frankly, that we have. We do not issue endorsement certifications, good housekeeping seals of approval. We can only make recommendations. Building and planning staff and the planning commission have it within their ken to enforce the codes, and I'm quite sure they do a commendable job of that. If there's something that we can do as an institution, as an advisory council, in strengthening the codes or creating incentives for developers that would enhance sustainable development going forward, that would be, to my way of thinking personally, a greater contribution than merely commenting on individual plans, given our lack of legal authority, shall I say. So that's a subject for further discussion, I think, with township management staff, perhaps the Board of Commissioners, how the EAC can be most efficacious in advancing the value of sustainability within the land development review process.
And I think it's also, I would also like to note, I failed to note earlier that I've been asked also to point out that your screening and buffers we really, are those monoculture of arborvitae and skip laurels really, is it possible to try to come up with some natives in there and not have a monoculture?
We can certainly look at that. One thing we struggle with is using Juniper virginiana in lieu of the arborvitae. We worry about and have experienced this cedar apple rust issue, and kind of struggle with that in integrating that native plant that is functionally similar to the arborvitae. But we'll certainly look at that.
Functional from a screening perspective, not from an environmental contribution perspective. Right? Is that what you mean? I mean, natives contribute to our our natural ecology here. The non-natives do not. Not going to support any real life. It might provide some shelter, possibly.
Right. Yeah, we understand. And again, it was, trying to functionally meet, the screening and buffering and, some of the items that we were trying to achieve for both neighbors and for future residents.
Okay. So are there any specific things anybody wants to advance as comments? Dan is shaking his head.
I'm good.
Okay.
I have nothing further.
I think we have conveyed the,
I don't know if Adam or Jen have any comment?
I have nothing this is Adam. I have nothing to add. A lot of my thoughts were already expressed. Thanks.
And I guess I'm just curious, this is a question for me to educate me, you as a developer. It seems to me that it would be quite cost effective and wouldn't cost that much to make all of the parking spaces EV charging ready.
So I'm not the developer, I'm the civil engineer. I suspect by the time this project gets built, you will have, the parking spaces ready just from the adoption of electric cars, right? It's almost not like a requirement, right? It's going to be more market driven,
Right.
Of having the building ready for it. So I would anticipate that, all the spots are going to be, or every other spot, right? A shared charger for 2 spots would be, primed for that.
Okay.
Will the electrical in the building also be?
That's what well, obviously you would need to have the adequate electric supply to the building to enable that. I thought that was embedded in the question, but Homo just wanted to make sure.
When they start making battery storage that is reasonable for solar panels, we could power everything.
That's not what she was asking, though.
No,
No,
I know.
I understand, you're asking, just making sure they have load, and for this number of parking spaces, I'm not sure how they would, I'm not an electrical engineer, but how they can spread out the impacts. I have an electric car, it's 6 years old now, but I actually charge it at, it charges at 4 o'clock in the morning or something. As you just set it to what time it actually charges. So I think a question of how that electric supply works, but I would anticipate that each one, being that these are condos, it's going to be paid for through the condo owner, so their supply is going to be off of their panel, so they're paying for the electric for it. So I'm sure there's a way that it will be done.
So you're saying the panels will not have the capacity?
No, I would expect that they
Or
would.
not? I'm unclear.
I would expect that they would have the capacity to charge.
Does the EAC want to just make any statements about like what you'd like the developer to look into specifically?
Well, I think there were I think all the things we've discussed, right? Making sure that the chargers that the panels are adequate and it's EV charging ready, and
Okay, so we can just write up.
we can write up, I think we
Questions
can
that
just write up
EAC
all the things that we've brought up. I don't think,
Okay, well, a lot of them were posed in the form of a question, so it's not clear, but we'll just assume that we'll write up whatever.
okay, well,
questions
thank you
are.
all. Is there anything else we need? Anybody? Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Good night. Feel free to stick around if you're bored.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, we'd like to hear your report. Paloma?
Try to make it quick, but a lot has happened in the last 2 months.
So we want to hear, we know a lot's happened, so give us a report. Okay.
So just quickly, housekeeping, just going back to Mackie's passing, obviously very unexpected and tragic. The board did hold a moment of silence for her at their building and planning meeting last week. And the township's making a donation in her honor to the nonprofits that were indicated on her obituary page. I also did bring a card if people want to write in that. Okay, moving on from that. I do continue to post things in Slack that I think can keep you guys up to date on what's going on in the township in between meetings, as well as like activities and events and things that, or other township meetings that I think will be of interest to you. So I don't know if people are still looking at Slack much, but that's sort of where I drop that kind of thing. Like here's an event they might be interested, or an educational resource, or something. We had an intern present at the Shade Tree meeting, so I dropped in the recording for that. That's where you can find a lot of that stuff.
Is there one central place in Slack we can go, or is it in a bunch of different channels?
Yeah, I do tend to put it in the channel that it's related
It's
to.
very hard to follow. I have to say, I don't really think, from my end, I don't think you're achieving your objective of alerting us to things in a manner that enables us to necessarily take advantage of them.
Okay.
I'm wondering if there should be a separate channel where you move all that, or you move all that stuff, and it's, things you think the EAC needs to be reading. And then it's up to us to,
Okay.
to read them or not. But I think for us to have to hunt around to find stuff, it's.
Okay.
I think
Okay. I'm
that'd be
gonna try to
great.
get
Thank
through
you.
this, and then if there's anything else at the end, let me know. Okay, so we did have 3 summer interns / fellows / graduate consultants. They all kind of went by a different name, but we had a high school student helping out with some of the administrative tasks for the sustainability plan, and she made some good progress on researching leaf blower bans. You guys might know her, Gwen Shapiro. She was also on 2 of the working groups for the sustainability plan. So she was great to have and very enthusiastic and engaged, and she got busy with school and activities and stuff and had to drop off. But that's an opportunity potentially for the EAC to pick up where she left off on that. She compiled a really nice summary of existing bans that she could find, and a summary of what they actually ban, what they're actually about, because there's some that are just noise bans, some that are time of day bans. And so it's nice to kind of see at a glance what they are, so that we can start to think about what we would want to do here in the township. And then she also compiled like news articles and things about, how they went, or the public reception and things like that. That'll be good information to start building kind of what we want to do here.
Is that report in a Slack channel?
It's not, but I can share it. Yeah, if you think that'll be helpful. Then we had a graduate consultant from, it was a partnership with the Urban Sustainability Directors Network. They have this nature-based climate solutions initiative, and they actually basically granted us, relatively low cost consultant for the summer. He's a graduate student at University of Colorado in Boulder. And he worked primarily with me and the Shade Tree Commission to start thinking about the tree canopy management plan, sort of auditing what other plans have, and what we might want to have in our plans, and what data goes into that and things like that. So that recording is in Slack. I think I put that in the general or the natural resources or something like that. Well, I see what you're saying. There should just be a EAC look here page. Or Dear EAC Love Paloma page. Okay, and then we had, so he did a really great job and really got us off to a good start. And I do expect his work to roll into the the RFP that's going out for that consultant, and then the review of the RFP. So is this consultant proposing to do the things that we now see would make up a plan? So super helpful. He did a great job. Then we had a graduate fellow, sustainability fellow, working on energy benchmarking for township buildings and greenhouse gas inventory for our municipal operations, using the Eac ClearPath tool, and also looking at our fleet vehicles and using a tool called DRVE to sort of estimate total cost of ownership for the vehicles themselves, and then for what would be their EV alternatives. So really cool project. The building benchmarking is going pretty well, but it's going to be a long process. So even after she's gone, we're going to have to go in and refine a lot of the information, take, better measurements at some of the buildings. Energy Star portfolio manager, we can only get an actual Energy Star score for maybe 5 or 10% of our portfolio. The rest aren't eligible for energy scores because they're libraries, gyms, cooling stations, pump stations. They're things that they don't attribute a score to. So they do offer an energy use intensity, but and so that'll be useful in some more cases. But there just are limitations for what Energy Star portfolio manager can do from an evaluation standpoint for some of our buildings, because they're just the variety of uses of our buildings just makes it complex. And you've got some spaces that are, heated, and then you have some spaces that are not heated within the same sort of like in the same meter area and things. So it's complicated, but it'll be a bit of a refinement process to get it as accurate as we think we can, and then start using that to pinpoint our most underperforming buildings and seeing what we can do to increase energy efficiency.
Is there a report associated with the benchmarking project?
There's not right now. If she has time before she's done, we only had her for a very specific amount of time, and that time ends next week. So I want her to try to finish, what she's doing first, and if there's time for her to write about it or do a presentation about it. I have asked her to sort of take notes and, do what she can to convey what she's done to outside stakeholders. So we'll try to get that. And then what I was thinking was maybe if she has time to do a presentation, like do it with me via Zoom, I'll record it and then I'll share it with you guys so that you can sort of be privy to it without taking up a lot of time at a meeting. For the fall, we have some more support. So the township is now part of the 2022 to 2023 PADP LCAP program cohort. So that means that we're going to be working with that group and with
What was the name of the cohort?
it's LCAP, the
LCAP.
local climate action planning program through the DEP. So that's what gives us access to the Eac ClearPath tool. It's still not clear if we have access to the rest of Eac. It's to be like we'll be finding out shortly enough. But
On the ClearPath tool, I think I took my notes that he used the ClearPath, your grad fellow doing the benchmarking, use the ClearPath tool for the municipal buildings. Are you going to be inventorying the entire greenhouse gas?
Yeah, so I'm getting to that.
Okay.
So the LCAP program is more concerned about overall community impacts. That's why I had Molly do just township, because I knew we were going to be doing LCAP for everything else.
I see.
So,
Okay.
but I did want to sort of pull out the municipal information for our own,
Right.
ability to look at and refine what we do in our own operations. But yeah, the LCAP program, so it'll include 2 Penn State students who are going to be helping to populate that, gather the data. And the way the LCAP program works is it's supposed to be for municipalities to write a climate action plan. So we're in a weird position because we're a lot farther along in the actual planning process than anybody else who's ever been in this cohort. But we don't have a greenhouse gas inventory yet, and we don't have science-based targets, and we don't have, projections for, what we think our greenhouse gases will be in the future and stuff. So we're sort of flip-flopped. It's usually the first semester you do your greenhouse gas inventory, the second semester you do the plan, but we're kind of going to be doing the plan and the greenhouse gas inventory at the same time. We're fortunate that, I'm doing the planning while the students can do the greenhouse gas inventory and stuff like that. So, but I am going to be looking. So what that means also though, is if we want to incorporate the greenhouse gas inventory into our existing plan, that might delay things a little bit. If they're in a semester and their semester ends in December, we might not have that information, until the end of December, might not be able to actually change around the plan accordingly or reprioritize things that we, see have a greater greenhouse gas impact until probably end of December, beginning of January. So
Well, that's great. For anybody listening, if you haven't, it's worth going on the ICLEI website and finding the section there where they go through and explain what the Clear Path program is. It's really, I think, exciting and very useful for your sustainability planning. And so I think that's great. It's a video with great graphics, and it's definitely worth, I think it's like 5 minutes. The
yeah,
video-
I think it'll make the plan better to be able to look at our greenhouse gas impacts specifically, and then they do projections and they do forecasting and things like that. So I think that'll really help, especially in the prioritization piece. What do we start with? And things like that, that'll be coming up. So I'm looking forward to that. It's just kind of a little bit of a delicate dance trying to figure out the timing of it all, because we're in a little bit of a weird position compared to the other programs. And I know we all really want to get a sustainability plan done soon so we can start doing stuff.
Yeah, excuse me, can I go back to the benchmarking project again? At the culmination of this internship next week, do you expect to have a baseline for township building and facility energy consumption and emission use, emission volumes?
Yes, but I don't think that's as simple as it may seem. So we'll have all of the data input into Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and all of the data input into ICLEI ClearPath, and all the data input into DRV. Each building will have what our energy was in 2018 when we started with the Energy Star or Energy Savings Program up through January of 2022, which is the last set of data that PICO sent us. So if that's what you mean by a baseline, then yes, it's not going to be like one number, or, it's not going to be very simple. It's 40 or 50 buildings. So what we do with that, will really be, that'll take us into another planning process, which is what are we doing about,
I don't know if it's simplified. If it simplifies it, but suppose one were to ask, what are the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions associated with the operation of this building?
Yeah, so that'll be, with specific buildings, that should be pretty easy to figure out with the data that we have. The ClearPath tool will do our greenhouse gas emissions for all the buildings. I'm not sure if it'll go at a specific building and building level, but yeah, we'll be able to see what our average use is in every building, and it's pretty simple math to figure out the greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I suppose the more data that one has with regard to specific facilities, the better it is to manage to a goal, to set a goal for reduction, and then to manage that building, or make operational changes, or for
Yeah,
physical changes?
typically you would rely on the Energy Star score or the EUI to decide what buildings are underperforming, relative to other buildings in that same category. We have a lot of buildings labeled as other, so it doesn't really give us a lot of data, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's tricky, and then it's gonna be a process of just looking at that whole list and working with facilities and realistically tackling like what actually can we change right now, and what's, there's some things that you just, you can, or it's not the right time or whatever.
Does the township have a staff person equivalent to like an energy manager? So you have that function as well?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm at this point the only person looking at our energy usage holistically. Our facilities manager and our engineer are very proactive when it comes to energy efficiency. So they've done a lot already in the energy savings program, and just day to day, like they kind of know what's, standard good energy efficiency practice. But that doesn't mean there's not still things that we can do from like an envelope perspective, things like that. So, but I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll be, like you said, good information, good data to be able to make sound decisions. So we'll have the LCAP program, and then Villanova actually gave us a RISE team this semester unexpectedly. We didn't have budget for it, and despite that, they had one of their project sponsors. They didn't have a project this year, so they had 4 students that were available. So they're going to be helping me out as well with the sustainability plan. Primarily, what I'm thinking they're going to be working on this semester is helping with that prioritization framework, and setting something up to where we can start prioritizing the strategies in the sustainability plan. So with the sustainability plan, the last week I had meetings with a bunch of staff to sort of get their feedback, as well as the admin team, to get their feedback on the list of strategies, both for township operations and community impacts that we've got put together so far. I got a lot of feedback. I'm working on sort of digesting it all right now and writing it up, so everyone can see what some of the feedback is. So it's a little bit more transparent, kind of how we got from what we started with to what we end up with. And then what I'm hoping to do, this was David's suggestion, which I think is a good one, is over the next 2 weeks, before the next stakeholder committee meeting with the working groups, either one at a time or maybe 2 or 3 at a time, depending on what, how schedules line up, but to sort of go over some of that feedback, look at the whole list of strategies, look at the list of strategies in each working group, and just kind of talk about it, think about it, refine it accordingly, and then just start talking about that prioritization step.
In that connection, I think we'd also talked about inviting the Stakeholders Committee to participate.
Yeah.
In those working group meetings.
Yeah, so like if the waste working group can all meet, next Monday at 6, that's when we'll have the meeting, and then we'll invite whoever wants to come to, and that you're right, like the primary goal was when you brought it up, was to have other people in other working groups have the opportunity to comment on the recommendations, and that was what we were planning to do at the Stakeholder Committee meeting. But I think you're right that just we wouldn't have been able to get as in depth as we could having individual meetings.
The suggestion was prompted by the breadth of the
Yeah.
strategies that you have accumulated
Yeah.
from the several working groups.
Yeah.
And that, anyway.
So like I said, I'm working on sort of refining that list of strategies. I didn't take them verbatim in all cases from the working groups. Some of them overlapped with other strategies, and so I sort of condensed where it made sense and things like that. So, but I'll be showing that to everyone so you can kind of see, like I said, what we started with and what we ended up with. I actually spoke with Steve Kimbrough yesterday to sort of revive the the thinking around that, the analytics that he's done in the past on what do you call it? Multi-attribute utility sampling method. So looking at the list of strategies and coming about a strategic way of how to prioritize them. So I'm basically just working through how do we want to prioritize.
Can I ask you a question there?
Uh-huh.
So you're saying you're going to use the ClearPath tool for the energy components, but you're going to use Steve's approach for the other things? Or
Well, the
I'm not
ClearPath
following.
tool just gives you data. It just tells you, is what our greenhouse gas impacts are. And here's what they would be if we did X, Y, Z.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
But that X, Y, Z one isn't the comprehensive list in the sustainability plan, right? It's
Oh,
just a few strategies that they happen to have in their system that you can
Oh.
pick from, right?
oh,
And we might not be able to input all of the data needed for all the strategies. We might not have that information, at the time that we create that, so it's,
I mean, isn't the truth that we're going to be doing this over and over again as we get more data? I mean,
Yeah.
you'll have a 5-year
Yeah.
kind of window and then, right?
so the ClearPath really just gives you information. It doesn't prioritize for you. It would make sense that whatever strategy comes out, as the highest greenhouse gas impact would rise to the top of the priority list, but there's and this is a question I wanted to pose to the EAC to maybe consider between now and the next meeting, is there are multiple, like as the name would suggest, multiple attributes, multiple criteria that we decide what makes something a priority. One is greenhouse gas emissions. Another is, there's projects that have no greenhouse gas impacts, but are still in our sustainability plan. Why? Because there's another environmental impact that matters to the stakeholders. Cost, feasibility, quality of life, equity. So there's lots of other criteria for what makes something a priority. And that's what I'm working on, is developing something where we can ask people how something ranks, how each strategy ranks across multiple criteria. So what I'd like to ask the EAC to do is think about those criteria and what you think we should be sampling people on or asking them about in that type of survey. So I think that's good homework for between now and the next meeting. And then at the next meeting, I'll also have the strategies for you guys all to see and discuss in advance. So our stakeholder committee was scheduled for this coming Thursday, the 22nd. That ended up interfering with an Ardmore master plan meeting. So I rescheduled it for October 13th, which consequently buys us more time to do some of this stuff anyway. So it turns out to be a good thing. And then in November, the stakeholder meeting, I think, is when we'll be kind of doing that ranking, or I'll be hopefully at that point be able to present kind of what came up as priorities and then discuss it with the group and adjust as needed. Okay, so that's it for the sustainability plan right now. Tree canopy management plan, staff is developing an RFP. I talked about the graduate students presentation in Slack. The stormwater fee, we are looking, so the first step after the consultant puts together like the presentation and sort of a summary of what they've done so far, is they want to present that to a joint advisory board meeting. So similar to how the Saldo was, EAC, Shade Tree, and Planning Commission, they want to hold a joint meeting to discuss it all with you all and get your feedback and get any questions, concerns before they take it on the road to the civics and all that. So basically they want you to beat them up as much as you can so that they know the words, what the
That's
words to
actually a good
expect.
idea, I think.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, I
it's
don't
the
know.
opportunity to,
I mean, yeah, I don't know that we'll be able to come up with everything they're going to hear from people, but.
yeah. But so you'll be there for a stop, and they're targeting October 26th. That's not set in stone yet, but that's the date that they're looking at right now. And that would be the day after the next EAC meeting. and it would be hybrid, so you could come Zoom or in person. And I'll definitely let you know when that date is set, but that's what they're looking at right now. Ardmore Master Plan, as I mentioned, there's a community meeting on Thursday evening. It's on the township calendar. It's primarily intended for township residents, and I think Bethel IME is having a part to play in organizing it. So, you know, bringing the faith community and local residents and things like that there to hear about the draft vision and goals of the plan. I don't think they're at the point of any recommendations yet. I think they're still sort of rolling out that vision and goals, although on the back end, I'm sure they're working on developing the recommendations. The EAC can designate a member to attend or a couple members to attend that event. Right now, there's not, the EAC isn't being asked to review anything or make any comments, but that doesn't mean you can't go to the meeting and come back at the next EAC meeting, make some suggestions for if you think there's something that really was missed or a missed opportunity or something you'd like them to consider in their recommendations. It wouldn't be a bad idea to have one or two members there come report to the group, and then the EAC vote on some recommendations that staff can deliver to the consultant, because this is the phase where they're developing their recommendations. So if you wanted to, you know, kind of put a bug in their ear, that would be the opportunity to do that.
In that connection, I attended I think it was the July public event that they held, where again, it was I think we did a SWOT analysis. And I have to say, well, as an Ardmore resident, as well as being a member of the EAC, I mean, I was favorably impressed by many of the considerations that were going into their planning, but I have to say that environmental and energy considerations were not among them. That simply was not their charge. Now, there were a number of recommendations, and I'm approached myself by saying that they came from residents other than myself. For example, that more public transportation be considered, which is in sort of a pet interest of mine. That if we want to reduce vehicular traffic in the township, one way would be to increase public transportation, shuttle buses, jitneys, and when that suggestion was made, I think I learned that SEPTA was discontinuing the 44 bus line. So things are moving in the wrong direction in some ways. But working with SEPTA and working with the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth, when it comes to highway planning, you know, if you want to reduce this rate of traffic on Lancaster Avenue or Montgomery Avenue, it would take the cooperation of the Commonwealth, PennDOT, and that's very difficult to obtain.
Is it decided that the 44 bus is being discontinued, or is that in there? They're going through a master plan with the bus system, right sizing the bus system.
I don't know, but well, there was somebody there from SEPTA actually, and that was my understanding, but it could be that it's really under consideration. I wouldn't say definitively. I don't know.
I know they're going through a process of trying to figure out routes and walking distances between routes, depending on.
It's a usage issue.
Yeah.
You know, that there was a lot of discussion in which I did participate about regional rail service and how people on the main line, including in Lower Merion, would benefit if there were more frequent train service to and from Philadelphia. I mean, people would, you know, be less reliant on automobiles. I mean, there'd be a lot of benefits to both the city and suburban residents if there were more frequent trains, maybe especially on weekends and weekend evenings. But whether that's a goal of the Ardmore master plan, I mean, it came up in that context, but I don't know that that's goes central to their planning effort.
Well, David, you are actually, if, we asked you to be our representative to the Ardmore Master Planning, so that's a great report. I do think a few EAC, if you know, a few EAC members want to go and come back with some suggestions. Maybe this would be a good opportunity for people in the EAC to share with you whatever questions they would like to
Can we
hear
do
about.
that after the?
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure, sorry.
There is a spot in the agenda to talk about the Ardmore Master Plan.
Okay.
Okay, so there's on October 22nd, there's the EAC Fall Gathering. It's in Haverford. I looked at the agenda. It covers a lot of topics that are of interest to this EAC. So I would highly recommend if people can make it. It's a
Do we
Saturday.
have to pay for it?
I don't, I'm not sure. I
What
didn't look.
what was that date again?
October 22nd. It's a Saturday. And I can send a link around or send the information around. They did ask me to join a panel discussion to talk about the sustainability planning process. So I'll be there. And then, so that's why I was.
Is it full, it's a full day, right?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, so it's like a panel discussion in the morning and then in the afternoon, it's breakout groups. And there's 4, so there's a, session 1, session 2. So overall, there's 4 choices you can make, and each one of the breakout groups, I mean, it's one of our, the EAC's main kind of topic areas. So if we had 4 EAC members and each one attending a breakout group, that would be great, or 2, or whatever. Okay, so plastic bag ban. I have a meeting with staff, building and planning, township manager, to talk about the draft ordinance, talk through any potential issues, potential implementation, enforcement, things like that. So after that meeting, we'll write up a memo with our recommendation to commissioners on how to, how we think we should move forward with it. And then that'll go to the board for consideration. So it's moving along. It is admittedly hard to make it a priority with everything that's going on with the sustainability plan, but we are kind of slowly but surely making progress with that. The EV
I
pilot.
recommend that you take a look at what we wrote for waste minimization sustainability plan.
Mhm.
Further enhancement to that.
Sure, yeah, okay. Okay, so for the EV pilot, I think I told you guys last month about the charger being installed here at the public safety building. This month, the update is that we put out an RFP for the Kegel complex chargers. It includes installing a new parking area, which is quite expensive. So overall, the project is the low bid came in around $300,000, but almost 70% of that is the parking area. It's, I think, like 80,000-90,000 for the conduit and the basically the electrical work associated with the chargers. That'll be a parking area dedicated for EV parking and EV charging for up to 8 vehicles. And the electrical work will include, allowing, the conduit and everything that you would need to put in additional chargers. We're only going to be putting in 1 dual port charger right now, but after that project is completed, we'll have the capability to add more.
Are they level 1, level 2, level 3?
Level 2.
Level 2. I think there's some funding in the IRA for municipal. I think if I read correctly, it's an actual, instead of a tax credit, it's a payment. But do you have a comprehensive list of things that are available to municipalities in that act?
I don't, I haven't, like when it first came out, well, I haven't read through the whole act, which I'm sure I would get a
Oh my
lot of that
gosh,
information
yeah.
from, but when it first came out, everything I was reading was about tax incentives and to private residents. So I haven't dug into it deep enough to see what would be, for for the township. Would welcome anyone on the EAC who would want to do that digging and compile a list. That would be great. I'm sure we'll be hearing more incoming, I get the newsletters and I get, any updates that come out and stuff like that. But if we can, preemptively see what might be coming just through the language of the act, that'd be great. But from what I understand, a lot is coming through the state. And there's not a lot that like we can take advantage of right now, And I know that fleets generally for the rebates and stuff, you get less than you would for like a public charging station, things like that. But it might be different with the IRA. So right now we're just looking at like 2 grants that would get us a $10,000 rebate, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things. And then we should be receiving the one of the F-150 Lightnings this month and getting a $7,500. Well, we applied for $7,500 rebate for that one. The other order was canceled and we had to reorder it for about $6,000 more than the original order. So that was kind of a gut punch, but I think that's happening with a lot of vehicles, not just EVs.
How can they cancel an order if they've accepted an order at a certain price? They retain the right to cancel it?
Yeah, and now they're,
Price?
well, they cancel it and then you have to reorder it and the new price is more expensive.
But who canceled it?
The, this, whatever you call it, the supplier, whoever we buy our vehicles from. It's happening all over the place with, and not just
The
with EV.
state buyer on behalf of municipalities.
Yeah, but you're buying through the state purchasing pool, right?
But what happens is that fleet vehicles are bottom of the list, like the manufacturer, it might even be the manufacturer who's canceling the order because they prioritize the dealerships over fleets. So they'll maybe give you, like they give us one, but cancel the other one. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's the whole. So anyway, but it's looking like the AFIG funding is pretty much offsetting any incremental costs that we would have if we get the AFIG funding. That would offset any incremental costs we had over whatever the ICE alternative would have been. So if we get that, we're pretty much breaking even on the vehicles. The charging has been a lot more expensive than expected. We're still looking at potential public EV charging locations.
So hang on. I think we, the EAC and you, need to be very careful about how we make statements of comparing what's being obsolete and what's the new architecture. Because the new architecture, almost irrelevant of how much more it costs, is a requirement for survival. To buy an EV is a requirement to survive. That we're doing it now at these prices is notable. But I don't think we should be saying anything except that it's a requirement that we go in this direction. It's a request I'm making of the statements you make to the staff. I just read, for example, the analysis of solar and battery to replace the backups, the electricity and the backup generators. That's an honorable analysis. It does not include anything about the requirement that we do that for the survivability of the planet. Not one statement in there for that. Sooner or later, we have to take on that urgency and go, we have to spend it. So I invite all of us to be very careful with our wording and just positively acknowledge that the purchase of the F-150 EV is an awesome step forward. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're looking at public EV chargers, still evaluating locations. I will be coming to the EAC when we have a short list to look at.
Did you notice the EV chargers going in at the Acme on Montgomery Avenue?
Yeah, I saw the permit.
Are they up and running?
I don't know. I just saw the permit come in like maybe a month ago or something. But yeah, that's pretty exciting. There's a lot of private investment happening too, which is nice.
Is there a way we can have an inventory? I mean, never mind. I'll bring it up later. Just keep going.
Okay, I'm almost done. I think I already told you guys what I asked for in the CIP. The operating budget will include requested to include 1 semester of a RISE team next year, 6 months worth of interns or graduate fellows or whatever, and the USCN membership. So I'm hoping that the
Membership?
Urban Sustainability Directors Network. That's who we are doing like the nature-based climate solutions partnership with. They've been a really valuable resource and peer-to-peer network and educational opportunity for me. So I'm going to keep going with that. And I'm hoping that the interns and the RISE team can help further along a compost pilot, program design, and maybe help out with the plastic bag ban and help out with some of these kind of initiatives that we want to get started without me, especially if I'm, still working on sustainability plans beginning of the year. Okay, and then I just wanted to make a note about advocacy. I know we talked last meeting about the EAC recommending that the board sign on to a letter, and that was kind of iffy. But I asked the Sustainability Committee what would be the process if the EAC wants, or if the EAC or I want the board to advocate for something at the state level, which I think is an important function of the EAC and an important thing for the township to do. So they said that the EAC the wording was pass a resolution, but I think that what they mean is you would vote to say we want the board, or you would vote to say we support this, and then you would ask the board to support it. So for the board, I think it would, so it's a little clear like the resolution language, but because I think the board would pass a resolution saying that they support such and such thing.
What we have done in the past, Paloma, is agree as a body to submit a proposed resolution to the board for its adoption.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like kind of what Ray was getting at. Okay, and so one of the things I thought you might want to consider for October is there is federal grant funding that's going to be available to the states to update their building codes to more energy efficient building codes. And I think that would be a huge thing for Lower Merion to advocate for, that the state pursue that funding and pursue those updates, because right now we can't require people to do things that are higher than the building code that we currently have. So it's basically the best thing that could happen for our, township's energy efficiency is for the state to start looking into a new, an updated building code. So,
Ideally, multiple municipalities would collaborate on engaging the services of a lobbyist, if you will. I mean, this requires professional activity, and
so if the
Lower
EAC
Merion
wants
has
to look
some
into that.
influence, but much less than would a southeastern Pennsylvania municipality or the 5 counties in the area, and it takes somebody to catalyze that kind of process of bringing people together, and of course the Board of Commissioners would need to embrace the concept of doing that, but that's a direction in which I would encourage us to move.
Okay, well, I'll leave that up to the EAC how they want to handle that one.
Can you maybe develop that a little bit more and see, because I think it's a great idea. We really need to be.
Well, it's not a bad discussion for an October 22nd EAC network. confab. But, more, some of this federal grant money is being made available to municipalities to collaborate on projects. And that's something we've talked about in very general terms and never really pursued that I'm aware of. And I'm sure there are obstacles to collaborating, but there are also benefits, and which may well outweigh the complications of it. In any event, I will
I would
see if
just
I
add to
can
that.
see if I can
David.
develop a proposal.
I think we need to be following what's going on with SEPTA more and advocating with, our region. There's a SEPTA representative that represents, Montgomery County.
Mhm.
We need to be looking at that more. I've been thinking, that's sort of along the same lines of.
Okay, so do you guys want to, come up with something that you want to do around that?
Can I, Paloma, it's Adam. Could I just ask you to clarify a little bit? Because I wasn't really clear. There's state funding for what exactly? I
There's
understand your suggestion about the building code, but what is the funding actually for?
So it would be federal funding for the state to review and update their building codes
I see. Okay.
to be more energy efficient, to have energy efficiency built in.
Does that require the state legislature to approve the codes?
I think so. So what I would say though is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If we can't in a quick, time frame, get a coalition of municipalities to participate in a bigger lobbying effort, I would still recommend some sort of advocacy for this individual effort from Lower Merion. And that would come from the EAC. Or you could do both. Resolution from Lower Merion and then pursue the other thing. Okay, last two things. Our MS4 report, the annual report for the 2021 to 2022 year is drafted. It's almost done. I think it would be great for an EAC member to review that plan and report back to the EAC highlights of it, namely what stormwater improvement projects did the township do in the reporting year, and how can the EAC support the next MS4 report, specifically the part around education and engagement. And then last thing, there's going back to the EAC website, someone needs to sit down with me and tell me what the EAC wants on their webpage. So that we can update it. Because I know it's something that you guys want updated. I've heard it, I saw it in the annual report, but the next step for that would be for somebody to think through what you want on the page, work with me and our IT department to.
I'm gonna refer that to the communications committee.
You'll have to tell them because I don't think they're on.
Is Jen with us?
Jen is with us.
I think, didn't Jen do an analysis of the
She did.
Jen, I see your hand.
website?
Yeah,
Some-
sorry. Yes, we did do an analysis years ago. And there's an outline of potential topic areas that we would want to have covered on the EAC web pages. So I can share that with whoever
Well, it's in the.
will be responsible for that.
And don't you have that in Google Drive? I know I've read it.
Yeah, it's in the Google Drive. It's not changed. I haven't touched it because
on the website?
until we have the resources, or, the township dedicates resources, it sounds like they are finally doing that. It wasn't worth doing. We may want to look at it again to make sure it's current. I mean, this was done back in early 2019.
Yeah, so to be clear, the EAC will need to populate the content and the township will.
Oh, yeah, well, that's clear, but we didn't even have any staff backup to actually get the content loaded.
Okay,
So
yeah,
we need that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, and it might take some time, but I definitely want to work with you guys on getting that updated.
So is Steve the one that's, or you, Nancy, who is responsible for the communications committee or the outreach committee,
Yeah.
whatever we're calling it?
And I think what we're gonna wind up doing is thinking about the overall framework, looking at what you've already done and try to see if that makes sense, or if we want to modify it in some way. And then we'll probably reach out to each of the committees for content for their specific areas. Like, we wouldn't write all the content ourselves. We'd go to each
Right.
team member that's focusing on something and see if they can help us can produce the content.
I would think that the committee would want to look at the outline that was prepared in 2019. There may be some areas that are not even relevant anymore.
Yeah,
You know,
no, I definitely.
Yeah, so, and then, the committees can, work on content.
Loma, are you creating a sustainability plan website?
There is a web page about the sustainability plan right now.
Okay. Yeah, there's not much to direct people, the general public to get them thinking about it.
If you have any suggestions, let me know what you think should be on there. It is just me updating the website, so it's,
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are 15 minutes away from our, do we have any other members of the public still on the?
No, I think we lost the sole member about a half hour ago.
Okay, thank you. What else do you have for us, Plum? Anything?
That's it for me. Yeah, that's it. And then at the end of the meeting, we can talk about action items that come out.
Well, I guess I think at this point
I'm okay with staying later if you guys, I figured today was gonna be a long meeting, just with the
what's
break.
people's pleasure about how much longer we ought to meeting go?
There is an action item under new business that may be something that we should at least discuss. I doubt we can't really vote on anything, but the sustainability questions for the National
We could definitely
Citizen
talk about-
Survey. I assume that we need to get those to the township soon. So this can be put together.
Well, I think, let's just run through this before we speak about anything. I think people have read, just running through the new business items.
What did you want?
Well, the sustainability plan, I think we have, I don't think we need to do more on that. Is there anything anybody wants to say about the sustainability plan that hasn't been covered in Paloma's report?
No, I think the Ardmore master plan, we said we were gonna come back to that.
The capital improvement plan recommendations, I guess I was sort of speechless reading the Public Works. I didn't really know how to react to it. There were comments in there that even indicated that we were suggesting they disconnect from the grid. That they were writing as if we were literally talking about disconnecting from the grid, or at least that's how I perceived it. And I also had to ask, when was that study done?
Between the last meeting and this meeting.
So it's all new data. It's not old cost data that they just put into a report.
No, it came from Gilda Kramer's request at the CIP workshop. And that's when they started the analysis.
Okay, so it's new data. Okay. Because it wasn't clear from the way it was written, what
where they're
what
sourcing.
year cost data they were using.
I don't know that I'm familiar with the recommendations referred to in that item.
Okay, there was, I printed it out, David, if I can hand it to you. It was what we prepared for the last meeting. So it was a recommendation that the Ardmore pumping station, they have in the current CIP that they're buying some new backup diesel powered generators, and the proposal had been to instead go with a solar with a battery backup.
Mhm.
And so there was a response to that.
I see.
Um,
So this was the Public Works response to our
Yes, they were
recommendations.
attached as links to the, you could click on the hot links that she had embedded in the,
I don't think I linked the engineer's report.
yeah, you did.
I did? Oh.
Because that's, I don't know how I would have read it. Oh, no, you emailed the engineer's report and I circulated it to the EAC members as soon as I got it from Paloma, so everybody could read it.
So this
before
was
the
done recently?
Yeah,
Like,
last
few weeks
Friday, maybe? When do you think I sent it?
I wouldn't have known if you sent it Friday. I didn't get back on until yesterday.
Okay, okay.
I'll look for it. So I should look for an email from you as opposed to a Slack channel. I'll go either way. I'm not choosy.
Anyway, I certainly would appreciate a on the new Ardmore Community Center, they did, I think, say that they were going to evaluate the cost effectiveness, but there was really no standards or next steps or anything that really, of the going lead.
Yeah, they awarded a bid to an architect who has in their plans consulting with a sustainability consultant to evaluate what is possible with LEED, what level we can achieve with this current design and what level we could achieve at, with different changes. And there's a table there that shows, or maybe not in this month, last month I provided a table that showed the cost of LEED gold and LEED silver and LEED zero projected estimated costs, as well as there's like a $200,000 fee just for becoming LEED certified.
Yeah, no, that's in this document that you circulated.
I can't remember.
It's in that document.
So
Yeah,
that's the next steps is their work, they're doing the architecture design and building in sustainability where they can. And
so it seems to
then,
me that, yeah, but LEED certification, paying for the LEED certification is different than meeting the LEED requirements. You don't have to actually get the,
so that's something I thought would be worth the EAC talking about at some point is, do we want to shift away from this blanket, you should be LEED certified, to targeting specific actions in the buildings to specific, or, just being a little bit more flexible with that request. Like at some point, the question is gonna come up
Well,
to the
okay.
commissioners,
I mean,
is
we
should
can
we
talk about
pursue
that.
LEED?
maybe we can.
And I think I think the board would appreciate guidance from the EAC about should they pursue LEED when the time comes or not.
And then the last item that was in that recommendation, which, by the way, that the recommendation came from Mackey, thought that the biggest area of new investment to get to platinum would be a substantial increase. There are a few solar panels on the original design, and that there would need to be a substantial increase in the number of solar panels, which is, in my mind, moving in the direction of what Dan was just bringing up. And that site has no shade.
Hmm.
Like there's no shade. There's, those roofs will be completely open.
Why would they propose a few without going in simply cost restriction? I mean,
I don't know.
It's not designed, the building isn't designed yet, so
Well, there
whatever.
was some
okay.
concept.
Yeah, it
and
was a
had few
conceptual.
Solar panels
Yeah.
in this concept. And Mackie felt that the single biggest area, when she looked at the design, was the PV panels and some other water plumbing fixtures, high performing materials, and increased insulation were the, there would be some work to be done, but also the windows.
So, I mean, the EAC is welcome to make a form, not now because you can't vote, but at the next meeting, make a formal recommendation that the board, or wait until the design actually comes out and they start talking about the, whether or not it's worth it to delete.
Well, I mean, you could design it to the LEED standard and then just not get the certification.
That might be something that's worth.
you would only want to get the certification if you wanted to stand out.
Right.
And be able to make the statement to the public.
Right.
And encourage them to move forward. LMSD says their high schools and schools are LEED Gold. And it's on a website. I'm not really happy after I've learned so much about LEED, about spending the money for the certification.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's also other certifications, and you could fill out a checklist for some of the certifications and just see where, so there's, and the point is that that's not really, there's not really a CIP recommendation to be made because they're not at that point yet of making any budget, they budgeted for the engineer, but they're not at the point of discussing whether or not it's, it should be LEED or not.
Okay, I guess the way I read the CIP, when I read the CIP, they do have the cost for the building in the out years. It's a multi-year plan, and they do have numbers in the budget for the building in the out years.
Yeah.
So they're saying we have a capacity, a bonding capacity of X, and we've slotted this amount of allocation, the total amount we're going to spend to these buildings. So so when you say it's.
I guess if you want to say, yes, we want you to spend $2 million for LEED Platinum, then yes, you would want to make that CIP specific
Yeah.
recommendation. So you want to look at that table and say, we do think it's worth it.
Anyway, the last item that staff responded to was recommendation that the township accelerate the completion of the Mainline Greenway, which is a low stress. It's a bicycle route from Ballackinwood all the way out to Stoneleigh, and it has some small connector parts that reach into different neighborhoods, but it's mainly this one big route. And to make it safe, it needs to be properly designed, and it needs signage. And there's a couple of intersections and a bridge where there's some significant safety investments that would be needed. And so the recommendation had been to design all the remaining sections of the Greenway and to make a plan to complete it in the next couple of years and put the money aside to do that. And the staff's response to that was that they want to do a plan, a comprehensive complete streets plan. And I mean, my reaction to that was, we've been talking about the Mainline Greenway we've been told that that's critical to getting people on their bikes for 10 years. We've been talking about it. So if it's critical to start what we know needs to happen in the long run, more planning around the total design for the township, I don't see why they have to be connected. That was my reaction, but that was my reaction. Of course, I was the person who was advocating for this.
I would have thought that Chris Lessling would have been advocating for it too. I mean, isn't that a pet project of Chris's?
This was Chris's response.
Not Public Works,
No.
surprised.
Okay. On the Ardmore master plan, I think, David, you and whoever else goes should come back and report to us in October. In October, there's no need for us to.
Yeah, I tend to attend the meeting Thursday night. And,
Yeah. And the one thing I'm really.
I'd be surprised though, Paloma, if they don't have, if they're not beyond the vision stage. I mean, they had contemplated having recommendations by the fall.
I
Need
just
to
don't
follow
think that that's what they're gonna be presenting at the community meeting tomorrow. It's on the website. Whatever they plan to do is on the website though, so.
I'll
And
ta-
you'll let us know.
I'll let you know.
I'll tell you, in looking at the land fair plans, I went on Google Maps and was looking down at that Ardmore area. And the thing that really strikes me is that it's an urban heat island. Like, it's just gonna get, that the more and more that they develop and the more trees they either remove or make sick and they ultimately die from the construction, that it may not be a place in global warming 10, 20, 30 years from now where people will want to congregate so much because there's no shade. And so to me, if I were looking at the Ardmore master plan, I would be really trying to think about natural provision of shade. And
I don't think that is within the ken of any of the, there are 3 consultants actually working on the project, 3 firms. I don't believe that the ecology of Ardmore is within the scope of any of those consultants.
See, I think
And
that people.
the emphasis is commercial. It is not environmental, which is not to say that commercial is not a vital interest to the township and to Ardmore. I mean, it's not the exclusion of other things.
I just
but
know that
that's-
I prefer to go shopping when I can walk down the street and be in the shade.
I think they are considering tree canopy a little bit. I was trying to bring up,
And which I think is a shopping
I
amenity.
know, for example, they wanted to do something which may include creating a green island on Rittenhouse Place, which is that very
Yeah,
wide
that would be nice.
street, and they want to do something to make that a friendlier shopping experience. There was also talk about closing off Anderson Avenue, making it a pedestrian thoroughfare, getting cars off of Anderson, which is right by the train station, the Ardmore train station, which I think would be, they're looking for ways to connect Suburban Square to Lancaster Avenue. Basically, originally there had been a concept of a bridge, and that's been scrapped, but so they're looking for other means of achieving that connection. No, I mean, they're doing all good things, but they may not be doing, taking into consideration or giving the same emphasis to the ecological impact of.
Well, I don't really feel like I'm talking about ecological, although I certainly care about that.
Well, that's what the trees are.
Their green infrastructure, David.
so they do in the goals that they,
Different.
there's a lot of information on the website about the past presentations and stuff that they've done. And I think that what they're presenting on the 22nd will be similar to this, if not a little bit more added to it.
There's a
But,
tree,
Yeah. there's
vibrant,
just-
sustainable public realm.
So these are their goals, and then each goal kind of goes into objectives. So some of it is,
Well, maybe they've, I haven't consulted this, but, maybe in light of the prior conversations that they have widened their vision,
Yeah. and maybe you might learn more on Thursday,
no doubt.
Well, they have use green infrastructure to manage heat island effects, stormwater runoff, and encourage biodiversity.
No, that's a positive statement.
That's good. Okay, move on then.
Enhance
Okay.
streetscapes with additional landscaping and
Make
pocket
it
plazas.
so.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think it'll still be important for the EAC to advocate for like specific actions
Yes.
in the plan and specific recommendations. But that is a good
When do
start.
you think that would be?
I think like
Oh.
report back on the meeting. If there's anything that you felt like really wasn't addressed to your satisfaction, or you didn't think they were really thinking about, or that you think the EAC should advocate for, bring it back. Bring it back in October, and then, there will be multiple opportunities for the EAC to do this, but right now, like October is a good time. When the recommendations come out and start getting circulated around is another opportunity, and then when the draft plan comes out.
Okay. The stormwater fee we've already discussed, right?
Yeah, not much going on.
Okay, the board priorities list, the citizen survey. I open the floor to people's comments on the citizen survey.
Paloma, when do they need questions for the citizen survey?
I haven't gotten a timeline yet, but I think your instinct is right, that if the EAC wants to weigh in on it, it should be like over the, maybe at the next meeting, have some to vote on.
Okay. I don't know how many of you are aware of what the National Citizen Survey is, but it is something that the township participates in every few years. We were supposed to do it in the early part of 2020 and that got delayed. And so this is now approaching 2023, and that's, I expect, when the next survey will happen. It has a number of standard questions and then the opportunity to add a few community specific questions. Previously, or the last one back in 2016 was about satisfaction with the police and library usage. And I propose that we consider questions related to sustainability, possibly delving further into mobility and public transportation, maybe other questions about, the importance of the natural environment, perhaps assessing our citizens' level of concern about climate change and the impacts on Lower Merion, and potential solutions. And it could potentially provide information that would guide future community engagement and outreach related to sustainability. So it's.
Can I ask you a question about the way the survey works? You seem pretty familiar with it. And maybe you can answer this question, maybe not. Now, surveys are, survey questions are crafted carefully by people who are experts in, surveys. Does the National Citizen Survey provide support where they might give us some sample questions around some of these topics that they've already sort of understand them to be well-written questions? Like, do they have a package of sustainability questions we could look at?
That would be a good question for Jeff Smith, I think. That, it's a standard survey that many municipalities throughout the country use to really assess the livability of communities and the services that the municipalities provide. So I would expect that there are other communities considering questions related to sustainability and mobility and understanding of climate change. So I guess that would be a question for either Paloma or for Jeff. I don't know. Paloma, what do you think?
What was the question?
The question was, do they have standard questions related to some of these issues that we could add to our survey? Because we're not asked to actually write the questions.
Okay, so from what I found, I didn't see any standard questions about well, I didn't find the like list of questions that you could choose from or anything like that, and I didn't see anything specific to sustainability. There, at least looking at the last one that was done, there were some questions related to the environment that were the provided questions. But what we're talking about are the custom questions that the township can add on to the survey.
Do you think that your, the group of sustainability managers that you've joined might have some resources of surveys? Because presumably doing surveys is something we're going to be wanting to do as we inform ourselves to best serve the, the needs of the community. I mean, the community engagement group felt that surveys ultimately were going to be surveys dedicated to sustainability issues were going to be important. So maybe, and we're wondering if there's some done already. Can we?
Well, so that would be separate from the.
I understand that.
Yeah. So.
But they might have already they may have already written some surveys.
Well,
There
so
could be ones out there we could look at.
for for questions that we might want to ask.
Somebody shared with us.
We
what
really
is it
only
that-
can do like 1 or 2 questions.
Okay.
For this.
There was a survey shared with us, I think, and I think somebody circulated, it could have been me, maybe it was someone else. I think it was it Plymouth White Marshes?
Abington?
Abington's at
Yeah.
Abington. It was
Yeah,
Abington.
you can look these things up. I mean, all these municipalities use the same service, and it's a validated survey, and they allow for a few custom questions. And last time it was about police satisfaction and library usage. This time, I suggest that we look at some questions related to sustainability. For example, mobility or public transportation, something that will give us more information about the public's understanding of climate change and sustainability. And that could help us guide us in what we need to do for, education and outreach for the future. But as Paloma has said, it's a couple of, not even a handful of questions, a couple of questions. And what I would suggest is that you look up what was done the last time for Lower Marion. I believe it's still posted on the website, is it not? Hopefully.
Yeah, it's linked. It's linked on the EAC meeting agenda, actually.
Okay,
So-
wonderful. So you can see and then you can actually look up these national citizen surveys for many Pennsylvania municipalities and get an idea of what kinds of questions they've asked.
Okay,
but
what I'd like to do is, because we are running late, I would like everybody to try to put together whatever they are interested in having the survey address, and let's put it populated in a Google Doc, and we can all just look at the different ideas. I consider this to be something that we can just all look at and then discuss at the meeting.
Yeah.
Create a single document that we can all discuss in public at the next.
Yeah, and kind of to what Jen is saying, like you really need to think about what is important for the township to know and come up with 1 or 2 questions that get to that. It's a tough task. Because I know we want to ask them about a lot of things.
Okay, so I will be happy to put together a Google Doc to collect this information and send it out to everyone. I hope that everyone will contribute some questions, and then I will summarize it for the next meeting so we can move this off our plate.
That would be great.
And
Thank
feel
you.
free to make that Google Doc a living document. If you want to populate that with other questions that we're interested, or other things we're interested in finding out, then we can use that information the next time that we do a more comprehensive sustainability survey.
Sure,
So,
sure.
yeah. Right.
But there are people who are experts in writing survey
I know,
questions.
I know.
Well, I know, and in fact, it's been very clear that these survey questions need to be validated. And the words that you use are really important. So we shouldn't be expected to be writing the questions. It's really more about the topic areas and what kinds of information we would like to get from this survey.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Very good points, Jen. Thank you. Okay, we've seen what the priorities lists are for the commissioners. We got an email from Ray Courtney this morning. Basically, he sent us his PowerPoint that he gave to a workshop this summer where the commissioners were setting their priorities for the next, I guess, 18 months. Out of a number, he said the sustainability plan is a priority, which is good. And that of the other things that we submitted, the two that rose to a high level and I think are being considered some things they want staff to focus on are, as he said in his email, are the composting pilot and the plastic bag ordinance. So we have to think about how the township, how we want to engage in support of those two priorities. And then there may be other priorities that we just decide ourselves that we might want to continue to develop more to get them higher up on the list the next time the commissioners are looking at near-term things that they want to do. So be ready to hand them better product.
I'm looking forward to seeing the list of all the things that the sustainability working groups have proposed.
Yeah.
Has everyone-
Dan has written this pretty comprehensive implementation plan for the, so I was a little unclear from what Ray was looking for. Like, what's the next step, Paloma?
You said he was going, that committee is going to write a proposal to go to the BOC, right?
So staff has to review the ordinance and discuss it and discuss implementability and things like that and write a recommendation to the board.
What's the timing of that?
We're meeting in October about that.
Okay, so do you think it'll be on the board agenda in November?
Depends on the outcome of that meeting, if how much support there is from staff and if they're
Is
recommending.
that just the plastic bag ordinance? You're gonna look at the top, and then you've got the research going on the composting. Okay, so for right now, you're not really looking to the EAC to do anything on those two. It was unclear from Ray's memo,
I think that it's always good to know what resources the township has to implement some of these things and one of those resources being the EAC. So what can the EAC commit to doing in support of it?
So I think it would be good to hear back from staff and then maybe have a conversation about what you imagine might be
The role of the
a need. Yeah, need. Mhm.
And there was the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, as I recall, was
Could you speak up, David?
the environmental, the state agency, not the nonprofit,
Penn Environment,
Penn Environment,
yes,
that I know Paloma consulted with.
we did.
And they've offered their services to aid implementation. And
Well, it would
I
be
don't
great.
think there should be a dearth of support. And
I think what's fascinating is Canada did it.
I've been hearing a lot of negative reporting about New Jersey that just did it statewide. There are definitely some unintended consequences that we want to think about and maybe work through in the draft ordinance.
We listed them in the waste minimization proposal.
Okay, I'll make sure that that's included in that discussion.
Yeah, make certain that goes to the Sustainability Committee to see.
Oh, yeah, all of the working group recommendations will be shared with everyone else. Is that what you mean?
No, they're working on the plastic bag ban now, so they should see
Staff, you mean. Or, oh, the
staff
board.
and the
board, I see what
sustainability
you're saying.
committee.
Yes.
You know, we also should clarify with Commissioner Courtney whether this is a single-use plastics ordinance or it is a plastic bag ban ordinance. Two different things.
The single-use plastic bag ordinance.
Single-use plastic bag ordinance. Okay, because that's not what
Is that
he had
correct?
listed. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page of what we're supporting.
Yeah, there's a very clear definition of what it bans, what it permits in there. And that's what the consultant supporting us from Penn Environment has
Yeah,
provided.
and
with
I
wording.
get that, Dan. It's just that Ray's email today to the EAC said it was a single-use plastics ordinance. And if it is a single-use plastic bag ordinance, then that is in line with what we have previously discussed. But if it's more than that, if it's a single-use plastics ordinance, that is a bit broader than what we originally had considered.
Okay, I don't have any emails from Ray.
I'll forward it to you. He said that he used the, I checked with him to see that he'd sent it to everybody. And he said that he had used the EAC email list, which I guess it's like he can just grab the whole email list and put it in at once. Do you think it might have gone in a junk folder?
It might have got into my spam, some of,
Yeah, and he blind copied us. Nancy and Mitchell received a copy, but everyone else was blind copied for the reason that we're to avoid discussion outside of quorum or something along those lines.
got it.
So I just went to his slides that he gave for the presentation that he gave to the commissioners in the summer. And yes, he used the words single-use plastics. He did not say bags, single-use bag, plastic bag. He said single-use plastics.
But we don't have anything in the ordinance except for bags.
I know.
Yeah.
Right, so I would just clarify that with him.
We'll talk to him about it. Okay.
Yeah, you have your meeting this week, I would assume.
A phased program, with that being the first step. Okay. I've now lost my agenda. Here it is. I guess the other thing to mention is that I attended the operating budget workshop. Dan, I think, also attended the commissioner's operating budget workshop in the first week.
Yeah, I was there for the first couple hours.
I think I would say that there were a couple of takeaways that I came away with, which was that it seemed that there was much made of Paloma's budget, which seemed odd to me, given how small it is, the amount of time that was devoted to the extra money that they were putting into Paloma's budget. And then they spoke about very large things without even ever having any conversation about it. So that I felt like I was a little troubled by the way they managed that. I'll just share that. Another thing that I took away from it was that Commissioner Kramer at the end expressed a concern that there was no holding spot in the budget for 2023 for implementation of any of the ideas that were in the the sustainability plan, when it was adopted, she said, we know we're gonna adopt a plan. We know there's gonna be work to do. There's no money in here to do it. And I would like some clarification on the response that I believe was given, which was, I thought what was being said is, well, you could use some of the money from the ARP funding, which I thought that money for the ARP funding was separately spoken for, and it was this, that we have ongoing recurring costs associated with sustainability plan implementation, which shouldn't be, it shouldn't be an either or on what, you know, this one-time money from ARP versus so sustainability implementation. So that, I think at the end, I mean, there didn't seem, the conversation died. There was no further discussion.
Do you want me to clarify?
Do you want to explain that to me, or?
So the concern that Commissioner Kramer expressed was, if we don't have anything set aside for sustainability for 2023, then how are we going to implement the sustainability plan? And the response was, just because it's not in the operating budget doesn't mean it can't be budgeted for later, or it can't be authorized by the Board of Commissioners even in the middle of 2023. So like, that's the gist of
They
the
can
response.
amend, you mean, okay, it's just, it was weird because he didn't say you can amend your budget in 2023. He said you could just spend some of the ARP funds.
For example, you can spend ARP funds, or you can amend the operating budget,
okay.
or you can amend the
Okay.
CIP budget. So
Okay.
it's basically that it's okay that there's not a,
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That was, thank you. I misunderstood that.
We had made recommendations for the ARP money. Do we know what the resolution of those
I don't think
recommendations
it's
has
done
been?
yet. Right, they haven't budgeted the ARP money yet, right?
they hired a consultant to do a study about how to spend the money, and that they published that report. And I don't know what's happening with it
Oh,
now, but
where's that report? We can find it on the
probably,
township
yeah, on the
website?
township website. I think they listed, remember they met with me and you, Nancy?
Yeah, I remember ages ago.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like anything we said to them really made it kind of got summarized as like an outlier, like, oh, some people talked about sustainability, but it wasn't
Oh.
really.
Okay,
And
Okay.
they enlisted me as an EAC member, so. But yeah, the sustainability didn't come out on top of, you know, everything else they talked to people about. My understanding is that the committee on the board that's working on ARP is going to take that into consideration and then make a proposal to the finance committee. And then the finance committee, I think, has the ultimate say over what ends up with it. So.
Okay. Is there anything else? I guess the only other thing I wanted to draw your attention to was this ICLEI series of training sessions I attended. I think Paloma attended, I know Gilda attended, Commissioner Kramer attended, on the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program, which is a program that's been around since like 2005, but hasn't been funded in a while. And the the Inflation Reduction Act dumped a whole bunch of money in there. It appears to me, I mean, I know Paloma has some question about this because of the choice of the word, use of the word city, when they were discussing it, as opposed to cities or municipalities. But it appears to me that under the criteria, any city, they said city, but I think city is a catch-all for municipalities, I believe is how they were using that term. Any city over 35,000 population gets an automatic, dollar amount that's available to them should they meet certain criteria. And then this money can be used for all kinds of things, particularly to help moderate and low income residents in the transition. To me, it was extremely exciting. And it did require that we have, I guess they weren't exactly sure, but they seemed to believe that if you completed the plan that Paloma said she's working on, I want to make sure I've got the in the LCAP program, what's it called? Yeah, what's the report?
Clear path?
No, not Clear Path.
No, wasn't it the energy transition plan?
Well, they don't use the word energy transition, they use
Action plan.
climate action plan. is the
Climate
word.
action plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that which has to have science-based targets and has to have deadlines, some goals tied to dates. That once you had that and it was passed, you were all the money you just have to present it to the feds and the money, you automatically get this money.
And you also have to supply emissions data,
Well, but she's doing that. She's doing the Clear Path.
community-wide emissions data.
And
yeah.
the Clear Path data would be adequate for that, as I understand it. So
Yeah,
to me-
and contrary to, I think, the assumption you mentioned earlier, Paloma, this money comes directly from the Department of Energy to the municipality, does not go through the state.
but there's also money that you can compete for, additional money above and beyond that you can compete for. So it seems to me, if we were to be speaking to the commissioners in the near term, we ought to urge them to do what they can to help support Paloma to get this finished, so we can, and have them approve it, right? They have to approve it. So that we can then, I believe this money, did I understand it to be annual money that is going to be doled out over the next 10 years?
I don't remember.
This would seem to be something like a priority
I would think it would be a high
for
priority.
us, for the sustainability manager, and what can we be doing to take advantage of this opportunity? I mean, we haven't quantified it. We say there's some sum of money. Is this $5,000 or is it $5 million? And is it recurring or one time and so forth? So this Q&A tells us essentially what
Both
the
Paloma and I
requirements
tried,
are, but
there was a tool that they referred to where you could go in and enter your data about your municipality, and it would tell you how much money,
Mhm.
or I guess their guesstimate, ICLEI's guesstimate based on their reading of the legislation. But it didn't work for me when
It doesn't include townships in that list. That's what I was talking about, is that tool.
how could, the city of Charlottesville is 43,000 in population.
No,
Lower Merion
I'm
Township.
not saying that
Yeah.
the legislation won't
Yeah.
include
Yeah.
townships, but it doesn't appear that, and I don't even think it was ICLEI that created that tool. It's another
Oh,
organization, and it doesn't appear that they have any townships listed in their list where you can estimate what you're getting. We're gonna be getting more information about it as it develops. What we know now is I think the most information that's out there right now is that
Right.
it's possibly coming, and that it's not outside the realm of possibility that Lower Merion would be the recipient of that money.
well, if there's anything that the EAC or any of us individually can do to facilitate this process, it would seem to be of the highest priority.
Yeah, the EAC can see what other information is out there, same with the IRA, summarize what the opportunities might be, whatever information you can pull together would be helpful.
Well, I don't know why the township wouldn't invite the township solicitor to provide advice as to what money is available under the statute.
I would imagine that there's any number of law firms that are providing briefings for their clients pro bono on this topic. That's common
Do you think so?
when a major new piece of federal legislation is passed.
Ask Adam. Ask Mitchell.
I'm not aware that we've done one, but yeah, I don't know.
You
Some of
can't-
them even just post it on their websites. You know, just as a way to, you know, and they, as a teaser to sort of, you know, get some consulting dollars.
Kind of like what Ickley is doing, like they pulled whatever information they could find and held a webinar about it to promote Ickley, really. You know, I mean, that's what.
I thought it was useful.
Maybe the DOE website would be a useful source. of
They said to
information.
keep looking at it's the DOE website that it's gonna be,
Yeah, they'll be putting
Yeah.
more information. So yeah, the Ickley, if someone on the EAC wants to keep on top of that and pull together information as you can find it, same with the IRA, that would be really helpful. You know, I'm monitoring it as I can, but I'm not looking at it every day, so.
is there a reason that you don't think that's something that would be appropriate for the solicitor to?
Oh, I just didn't think that that's something that they do, but I guess I could ask.
A lot of law firms do that. What is the DVRPC forum? Can you remind us?
That was the one that you attended. I actually couldn't attend. I had another meeting that day, but that was the other municipalities talking about their sustainability plans and.
Yeah.
It was really high level. I didn't get a lot of details out of it at all.
Oh, I thought you
Yeah.
said you were like really impressed and excited
No,
about
I
it.
didn't mean to
No.
convey that. No, it was,
Talk about the same thing.
there were a few things that were interesting to me. That the thing that I was excited about is that there's some municipalities, like Middletown, is it Middletown Township?
Mhm.
In Bucks, it seems a lot like Lower Merion, a little smaller in population. And they have already done quite a lot. They've implemented a lot of things, you know, they've put solar on their municipal buildings, and they say they have police electric cars in their fleet. And, you know, just so I just thought it was interesting to hear that was, I think, the thing that was
And
most.
They use the Mustangs. It's
Mhm.
not four-wheel drive. Doesn't do a long distance.
Mustang is 4-wheel drive.
I know, but you told me they needed four-wheel drive.
It is, the Mustang is 4-wheel drive.
The Mustang?
The Mach-E, yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
okay.
How many miles a day does a police car drive?
I'm not sure.
Anyway. Okay, assignment of action items. Board of Commissioners meeting tomorrow night. Anybody want to attend that? Report back? Please hear anything?
Not available.
Okay,
I'm still out of commission.
sorry?
It's available. via-
I'm still out of commission.
Oh, yeah, you can watch it on the local access channel. Planning Commission, Building and Planning.
And Nancy, I wonder if it's worth our time to continue to go to planning commission and building and planning committee meetings until we have a clear idea of how the role of the EAC in land development review.
Yeah,
Good point.
I think.
What,
Yeah, I agree.
what, I'm sorry, what's,
I think that maybe I'll leave this to David. David, do you want to speak to this a little bit more? You alluded to it in the
Well, I
earlier comments.
The object is to make ourselves as useful as we can to the land development review process. I am personally skeptical of the value that we currently provide to the township or to the developers. because we do not have any leverage, and the township staff and the planning commission are fully capable of seeing to code compliance. On the other hand, we might very well have a function to play in revising township codes to create conditions, circumstances for more sustainable development. And so it would be my suggestion that the chair appoint a committee, I'd be happy to serve on it, of EAC members to meet with building and planning or whoever other appropriate township staff to discuss the role of the EAC in the planning process, because I think it's undergone a lot of transformation over the last 6 years. It's been a little bit of a stuttering process, but at the end of the day, I don't think that the time that we devote to it is in any way proportionate to the value that we confer, which is
Right, I mean,
we
I
confer very little value for a fair amount of time. And if there's ways we could be more helpful to the township, that's what I would like to explore through a committee. So,
I mean, I think there's a general feeling that we add no value, and that we, to repeat what David's saying, but that it takes an enormous amount of time. And we have a lot of other things that we think where we can make a bigger impact. We have, and we see when we look at the codes all together and how they then produce some development, that there may be some places where there are unintended negative consequences that we would like to address.
I think that reviewing individual land development plans is a good way to learn like what is happening and what kinds of suggestions can be made. But because it's harder to just read the code and figure out how things apply than it is to look at how this process develops and say, oh, you know what would be great is if instead of asking about EVs or instead of asking about energy efficient buildings and making a recommendation, wouldn't it be great if we put that into the code? So I think they can work together, but if you're talking about no longer reviewing land developments, that's a code change and that has to go through the board. So if you're saying the EAC wants to opt out of this thing that the code says that the EAC will do, then I think that would require the EAC to vote on that request to the board. So I think the ball is in your court.
you know, that could very well be a recommendation that would be made. But I think, at least in my mind, that's only one possible outcome of a discussion with township staff. I mean, one of the reasons, there are multiple reasons why we provide very little value, by my estimation, at this point. A lot of it is the timing of the review. A lot of it is the exclusion of the AC members from the Land Development Committee process. A lot has to do with the relative lack of expertise on the EAC. So, you know, some of it is structural, and you know, if we are merely a box that has to be checked off because an ordinance was enacted which thought that EAC review might be meaningful, then we may have learned from experience that it's not a useful process, and in fact the code ought to be amended. Although I'm not sure there's any, I don't know that the code requires EAC review. I know that the enabling ordinance for the EAC includes as one of our duties the review of plans, but that's not to say that I'm not aware, I could be mistaken, but I'm not aware that plan approval is contingent under any ordinance on the EAC review.
No, but it's a function of the EAC that the board is expecting of the EAC. So if you're going to stop, then it needs to be a discussion with the board.
Well, I think it would be
I think it
useful.
should be a discussion. That's all I'm saying. In other words, I'm not prepared to move to, excise that
Okay.
responsibility. As I said, that could be an outcome.
You're more.
I'd like the board to tell me, to what extent they have looked to the EAC for advice in approving any plan. That would be interesting to me.
Yes.
And if it turns out that they could care less, then that would be a data point.
But I also think there are issues in the codes that are worth us.
Oh, I think we have a role in land development, but I think it has more to do with sustainability planning than it does with individual plan review.
And I do hear you, Paloma. I have learned from looking at individual plans.
And I think the comments you guys made today, like, if there had been a quorum here, those could have been put into the actual conditions of approval that are ultimately considered by the applicant. There's nothing forcing them to do
Right.
it, which is something we want to look
Yeah,
into.
there's
But
no-
we can still pass these
Unless-
ideas along, and the township doesn't have to have us vote on them to decide whether the planning staff thinks it's worth putting in.
Well, how do you get it? I mean, you have to vote on it for the planning staff to get your comments. That's no point.
Hardly, but
Well,
that's neither here nor there. I mean, we can't,
planning
we don't
staff
have the
can
power
choose
to
to read
adopt conditions of approval. And indeed, our recommendations could not be incorporated by township staff into conditions of approval because they do not have code backing for them.
Yeah, I agree that the code is the most, like incorporating things into the code is the best use of your time. I'm just saying, like, if we need to figure out what you're saying here in terms of not reviewing plans and what you want me to do with that information.
okay, well, is there anybody else that's interested in working with David on this in terms of having some conversation?
I would, this is Jen, I would like to work with David on this. What I would propose is that we do not continue to attend planning commission meetings and building and planning committee meetings without a clear role in the land development review process. But in the meantime, we should really think through what our role could be.
Well, Chris Leswing told me that there are not a lot of big plans coming forward. Isn't that what he said, Chris? Chris said that, right? So this is a good window of opportunity where we could do some thinking around this and some work around this without it really, causing any procedural anxiety, which I'm sensitive to the procedural anxiety that, I
We need to get
I
ready
understand.
for Lankanaw and St. Charles.
Yeah, so here you have one person saying that it is important to look at individual.
Wait a minute, when is, we do want to look at Lankanaw, and that is a major,
Lankan, Mainline Health has already made a presentation to the public of a draft plan.
was that the thing
Yeah.
on site?
No, I saw an online one. I attended an online one. And it's a draft idea and concept that the planner has put forward. And there's lots of green space, but there's no playground. And that was my personal observation, okay?
There's a lot of lawn.
It's a lot of lawn and no playground. And all of the tennis courts and basketball courts disappear. And so there'll be a lot of buildings. And it's going to be very pretty. There's going to be a hotel and commercial area and residents. No exercise facility discussed. No sports at all. No athletic support at all discussed. So when we talk about sustainability, do we include the bodies of our residents, the physical bodies of our residents who are going to live there? I don't know. I might be reaching out. Anyway, that's coming.
I mean, there's a lot of that that's a little, I mean, they are not. It didn't appear to me when I went over there, appeared to me there was a lot of opportunity to make it more sustainable. There are some interesting things that it's going to be a walkable, small, little self-contained community, which has some kind of interesting, positive, but we don't have a lot of land in the township, and we do want to see that the land is used as, well, there's a lot of open land. This is like the biggest piece of open land left. So.
Okay.
So as far as action items, what are you thinking for that, for the land development stuff?
Having a committee that's going to ask you if you could facilitate a meeting with Chris Leswing, in which Chris brought up to us that he really wants us to be doing big thinking, bigger thinking. So I think this is an opportunity to explore that with him and find a way for the EAC to have a bigger impact on the codes and taking another look at how the codes are not working. And I understand that that's happening now within the township. You guys are assessing parts of the codes that, actually aren't working.
Yeah.
I have a neighbor who's a township employee who's one of the people doing that. So I just heard about that walking the dog. So that seems
A
timely.
discussion to optimize the role of the EAC in the land development process.
Okay, a discussion including looking at the codes.
Absolutely. Well, if that's our highest and best use, then yes.
Okay. And then the EAC will come back with what they want to do with that.
The committee would make a recommendation to the EAC.
Yeah.
And I have action items. So, David, you're going to the Ardmore Master Plan meeting.
I am.
I'm asking the EAC to consider what ranking criteria we want to include in our prioritization of the sustainability plan. So
I thought your enumeration was excellent, by the way,
what was that?
if you remember it.
I don't remember. I'll have to watch the recording. That was just what I thought of in the moment.
I will create a forum for gathering sustainability questions for the National Citizen Survey and send that out to the EAC. As well, I will provide, I guess, is it Steve? With the outline that was prepared several years ago for the EAC website.
Will you send it to me and Steve?
Of course.
I know I've already read it, but it would be great if you could make it easy for me. Thank you.
I'll make it easy for you.
And this is Adam. I'm going to review. I'm actually partway through reviewing the MS4, and I'll get comments
Awesome.
back.
Thank you. We're going to clarify with Commissioner Courtney about the single-use plastic versus plastic bag ban.
There's only one ordinance.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it's just his wording to go along to make certain his wording matches the proposed ordinance.
One more action item, consider for the next meeting, a resolution or a draft resolution to the board about advocating for the state to adopt more up-to-date building codes.
Which
for
building
education.
code do we want to focus on?
I will get the language, but I think it's like they're either the energy efficiency code something along those lines. I'll have to look at
Well,
the,
it's the building code and the energy code.
yeah.
Probably the two
It's
state
both, but
codes.
there's multiple versions of it, and we're 2 versions
Oh, yeah,
behind.
yes, yeah.
I just want to know which version.
We're at 2015, I think. Steve.
Yeah, and there's an 18 and there's a 20.
I think we're using 20, I think Pennsylvania is using 2018
No.
for
No.
the,
I think that is,
The recommendation is skip 18 and go to the
yeah,
next
the
one.
recommendation is to, the recommendation is to use the grant funding to explore updating the building codes to more energy efficient.
Paloma, would it be possible for you to obtain a copy of the RFP for the strategic tree canopy management plan or whatever there?
Yeah, that will be circulating to the advisory boards once it's completed.
So to the advisory board, so we will definitely get to see it, not just the Shade Tree Commission. Is that correct?
I think so. That is my current understanding. I could be wrong, but that's what I
'Cause
understood.
I think it's a month or so off. But yeah, I think it's appropriate for the EAC to take a look at that RFP before it's distributed. So you'll keep on top of that for us.
Yeah, and definitely take a look at the recording of Vince's presentation on Zoom.
Yes, I actually heard Vince's presentation at
Okay,
the
good.
Shade Tree Commission meeting, so I'm
I
on
think,
top of that. It's just that the Shade Tree Commission has been very much involved in creating that RFP. And, the EIC obviously is very interested in the information that will come of it, but we have not been a part of that RFP process. So I would like to have an opportunity for the EAC to review that RFP before it's out.
Yeah, that's my understanding that that's what's.
Okay, all
And the
right, thank you.
Commission, I mean, really wasn't that involved in creating the actual language of the RFP. They provide a lot of background information that went.
Right. Right.
Okay. That's all of the action items. I had just remember save the date potentially for October 26th for the stormwater fee. And October 22nd for the EAC Fall Gathering.
Do we have to pre-register for that?
I think so.
Yes.
Did I send something around about that, or did I forget to send something?
I
around?
thought I had it on my calendar, but I didn't, so I don't know.
Okay, I think I got something at some point, and I will send it around to everybody. And Jen pointed out to me it was Thursday last week that I sent that email with the attachments, David, that you wanted.
this Thursday?
That's what she said. She said it was last Thursday.
Yes, this past Thursday.
So, and I guess the CIP recommendations is there anything that you
Well, I mean,
wanted
we've gotten a response back from the staff and, right? I mean, we're not really sure that response went to us or to who the audience was for that. But
for the solar evaluation? Or, well, what the question I'm asking is, does the EAC have anything that they still want to vote on for CIP or for budget next month?
well, I mean, I'm looking over at you two to see if you have any.
I'm sorry.
Do we want to vote on anything? We've already voted once. We've gotten a response back from the staff.
Yeah, you voted to get a response from staff, yeah. So is there anything left that you want to vote for the board to get delivered to the board?
I know that you've reviewed this, Dan, so I'm looking over at you. I know you've reviewed that response, the engineering report.
Yeah, I did. And the one question I had is, did anybody cross-check their numbers? No? And
That's why I was saying, where'd they come from? I mean, where did
yeah,
the
so
assumptions
we-
come from?
I'll take a solid look at the numbers.
Thanks.
I think the bigger takeaway from what I read from that was that that solar isn't going to meet the needs of that facility, and you would still need a diesel backup generator.
I guess I was confused by this either or way in which he framed the whole argument, which was either it's 100% solar or we don't do solar, which is not.
That-
I
I found that troubling.
found that really troubling. And it's not how you should think about solar. I mean, we don't get 100% of our solar at our house.
I think it's
Uh,
because
are-
the suggestion was to not get a backup generator and to get solar.
I know that, but he
instead.
then turned that into also for the facilities. He used that he carried that
For this whole
same line of
facility,
thinking
the
for the
same,
facilities.
yeah.
Yes, he did. He talked about the fact that we needed to have, yeah, he did. I mean,
We're only talking about pumping stations.
I read another one.
There
that
was another one that was the whole building complex here,
Other buildings.
and about putting solar panels on the parking lots and.
I think that would have been needed to service the pumps.
No,
You're talking-
no.
No, that was just to
no.
serve the
No, he looked at the
electrical
whole-
demand of this complex.
Do you think we could do some of this offline with Commissioner Courtney,
Okay,
perhaps?
okay.
Instead of tie this up tonight?
Let's tie this up tonight. Any other?
Okay, so for
motion
that, then
to
if the
adjourn?
EAC wants to recommend to the board that they look at the numbers or do something different with that, then you'll want to come back next month and vote on it.
Okay. We'll dive into that a little bit. Okay.
I think it's going to be a waste of time. I don't think the board is going to move forward with that recommendation. But you're welcome to do it.
I hear you. I also think that the way it was evaluated was. I don't know.
Yeah,
Let's,
and we can,
motion to adjourn, please.
seconded.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Good night,
Okay.
everyone.
Vote to adjourn.
Jen.
We're not actually.
We don't
in
have a
session.
quorum, I don't know. Where's the parliamentarian? Is it okay? Can we vote without a quorum to adjourn, Paloma?
Here's our fourth member.
Good night, everyone.
Adjourned.
Good night, Adam.
What is that?
It's a chunk of wood down here on the floor.
I bet there's a story behind that.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you who did come to the meeting, thank you. I was glad not to be the only person here. I mean, I would like to be with Paloma, but, it's nice to